Good evening, everybody. We're going to start the Council Infrastructure Committee meeting tonight on the 15th of June. And we're going to flip the order of the two items on the agenda. So we'll do project updates first, and then we'll work on the regional agenda. All right? So welcome, everybody. And so I will pass that to the two of you here for project updates.
We're retrieving the spreadsheet that has the projects on them, but I think Sheldon said I could maybe go ahead and start on an update on a road project. And that's, it is on your list, that part of the table, and that's the Shangri-La Talus Drive intersection reconstruction project.
Okay.
And
that is on our list, right?
It's on the list,
There it is,
and there's been a little, update on the status update there, but I'm going to add to what is there. We have been working very hard to try to identify what's needed in the design for that reconstruction. And also...
And we're talking the talus where the slide was on the road
correct.
below
So
the slide.
Background is, right, on parcel 9, just above Shangri-La at Talus Drive, where we had earth movement. The road was compromised, the wet utilities were compromised, and we did temporary relocations of some of those utilities. It's, as we have said for quite some time, it was our goal to try to do the reconstruction this season, this construction season, and we're trying to hold to that commitment. The challenges to that, though, have been that we have tried to facilitate partnership with the property owner and developer of Parcel 9. As you know, we are hoping for collaboration to the extent possible to avoid additional future claims. And in particular, there's a buttress at the edge of that property on the eastern side of the property that was meant to slow the slide. And that buttress is partly in the public right-of-way and partly on the private property of Parcel 9. And for us to do the road reconstruction, it needs to be moved, at least out of the public right-of-way, so that we can do our project. And so we've been working with them to try to gain their consent, or either their work to remove it, or their consent for us and our contractor to remove it, and their agreement that it can be moved. Our geotechs have felt that won't cause any problems, but we needed them to buy into that. So we just got that about, maybe it's been close to 2 weeks now. That affected how we go about design and construction, and so we needed that piece of information. The other piece of information that has delayed the final design has been what sort of structure needs to be constructed to help protect the public infrastructure there. And so our geotechs and engineers have arrived at conclusions on that. Simplified terms, we're talking about constructing a buried wall at the edge of the public right-of-way on that west side that would help shore up the road and the wet utilities underneath it. And so that's added more time in our design effort, certainly has added new cost to our cost estimate. When we last came to you for a budget amendment and had a package of Talus 9, Parcel 9 related costs, we had a plug figure for road reconstruction, and it wasn't fully burdened. It certainly didn't include the cost of the wall. So the project cost is larger than what you saw in your last budget amendment. And we are now, because of all these timeline factors, in a place where we will need council concurrence to move forward quickly in order to get under construction this season. So the project is out to bid now. Bids are due on June 22nd. And so this tonight is a status update to you so that you understand a few things. One is we will be bringing back, we hope, bids at the July 6th council meeting. And we will be asking at that time, if we do have bidders, to award the bid and also to appropriate for that project. Couple of different scenarios here, right? If we don't get any bidders, we're going to have to go with Plan B, which probably means pushing off the construction project potentially. So before I guess I go on to maybe answering any questions you might have about cost and kind of giving a quick breakdown on that, since it's a sizable number. You know that our hope was to get our infrastructure back in a permanent condition. We cannot continue to sustain the temporary infrastructure up there without additional operational impacts, uncertainties about the future, and so that's why we're committed to trying to do it this season. Right now we have temporary water lines that run through parcel 7 and 8. Those are nearing completion. That property owner soon going to ask us to relocate again. That's one factor. Public Works Operations goes up there every day to check on the temporary infrastructure. That's a lot of our time. We'd like to stop doing that and have permanent stuff in place. So those are some other reasons why, and we also don't want to go through a whole nother wet season with temporary infrastructure and infrastructure that may be compromised or are not up to city standard. So those are the reasons why we want to try to pursue it. And while we know one touch is not the way that you all like to handle things, neither do we. The reason we're at this place is because we have been trying very hard to collaborate with the property owner and try to ensure that the city's liability is minimized and the cost to our taxpayers is kept well defined at least. Yeah, if you want to give a little breakdown on cost.
Sure, I can give some breakdown on costs. As Emily mentioned, the buried wall was one of the substantive changes in scope of the project as the design moved forward and advice was given by the consultants in specialty areas of geotechnical engineering to protect the infrastructure once new is built. And that wall alone, just by itself, is running almost $900,000 extra. So we are talking a substantial amount of money that's different than what we previously projected. And then also, as what Emily mentioned, you know, when we initially put a number in for the budget, all the detail wasn't known. And so there were some other increases in there for specialty valves and some other things in there that drove some costs up as well. And as well as we had some escalation. Obviously, when we were doing budget last year, the current economy of bidding and things like that wasn't foreseen. So we're also projecting some increases just as a result of that. The competition's going to be very stiff out there. And you know, everybody's busy, but they still want the job. So everybody's going to bid it high. That's what we're finding right now. So those are really the major changes in there. So I guess kind of in a summary nutshell, the engineer's estimate right now is looking at approximately a $1.34 million additional budget ask. Additional. That's the engineer's estimate. Now, when the bids come in, we'll know more. But right now, that's the engineer's estimate, and when we open bids, we'll find out what the real number is. Yes.
So you guys done that? All right. Yes, go ahead.
So the budget amendment we did in 20th had, where is it? 2 changes. Deleting $750,000 and inserting $486,000. And I think this was to separate what money had already been appropriated and was moving forward and what was new. So the insertion of $486,000, this next budget amendment would be $486,000 plus what?
That's about the
Plus-
1.3 and change.
Plus 1.3 and change.
Yeah.
So it's 1.7 or 8 total.
Correct, that's what we're anticipating right now.
So 750,000 from a previous year and 1.7 total from this year. That's why the 750,000 was.
Yeah, so some of that 750 was not related to the road project. It would have been for other parcel 9 expenses. So I don't think you can combine those two numbers.
Okay,
It's the
so-
remainder of the allocation from the previous budget amendment, that 486 that you spoke of, and then the new appropriation that we're estimating at 1.3 at this moment.
Just in terms of information, so those that attended leadership got an update on this, but how does council and the public then also get updated on it? Because we have one other council member here tonight, but that's a big jump from, we thought we might spend 486 to we're going to spend 1.7 million.
Right. So I'm attempting to touch base with council members ahead of that July 6th meeting. That the news will keep changing, right? After we get past the 22nd, we'll have real number from the bid. But we're reaching out now to try to ensure council members know this is likely to come as a one-touch, and that we will be asking for that appropriation. I also am anticipating probably providing a quick summary along these same lines in email. That may come after we get the bids, so that you can have one email about this project. As for the public, I would anticipate we may include something very, very brief in the mayor's remarks, just saying that we're out to bid and anticipating.
On Monday.
Yep, those bids to be back on the 22nd. And most of what will be communicated would be on that July 6th meeting or via that packet.
I was looking at on the website, on the Talus update page. How does that tie into this communication of this new information?
Yeah, we would update that once we have a little bit more clarity about the timeline for the construction activities. Ahead of that, I'm not sure that we would. We're keeping our eye on a couple other things too. Property owner has communicated to us their intent to come in for some permits to do some preliminary stabilization engineering work on the site. And we have not yet received those permits, but we certainly want to be able to communicate to the community what they will see and what is going on and how that's connected to all the other pieces. But we haven't received a timeline from them, nor those permit applications. And so we're waiting for that. But that's one potential thing that we would provide as an update on the website. Another is we anticipate PSE, for example, relocating their utilities in advance of our road project. But we don't have a timeline for that quite yet either. So we'll want to communicate the sequence of these events, and we will post that on the website once we understand those dates.
So I think the information that was out there in the past was that the property owner on their own property might install a soldier pile wall, and now the city will also install a soldier pile wall.
Correct.
And the driver for that is that there's a history of a slide. Otherwise, we wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I'll let Sheldon answer that. I think there's still, of course, lack of certainty about what the property owner will do and when. And our geotechs have advised that they feel that regardless of what that property owner ends up doing, it's in the city's best interest to make sure that we've protected our
So even if they
infrastructure.
do a shoulder pile
Correct.
wall so that they can develop their property,
Correct.
we're still going to have to put the $1 million item in for them to develop their property.
Yes. The uncertainty of where and what and how the developer or property owner does their wall, if they even choose to move forward that way, is still an unknown. And to reconstruct all your infrastructure and not protect it was recommended against that, and that we do something that we're actually going to protect what we build. again, as Emily was mentioning earlier, we're trying to do our best to minimize the city's costs, but yet protect our infrastructure and things like that as well. So yeah, it's important that the city protect the new infrastructure. Otherwise, you don't know how long it's going to be before the developer or property owner does anything. And if they do something, is it going to be enough to protect our infrastructure? Because they may be only concerned with a small piece of their property. I don't know. It's their private, business. So there's a risk if we don't protect it with a wall.
I get the risk.
Yeah.
It's the irony of, there's a slide that's happened, and now we have to construct $1 million insurance policy for ourselves for infrastructure that the repair might even cost less than $1 million because there was a slide on someone else's property, and they're also going to do a shoulder pile wall so they can build. It doesn't sound good. I'm not saying we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it doesn't sound very good.
Right. The only thing that I would add to that is I think you made a good point of, what the purpose of those stabilization efforts are. And the property owner clearly wants to stabilize their property so they can build on it. And we have a slightly different objective, right? We have it, or an additional,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that that is attended to. As you know, we continue to have conversations with the property owner about what costs are the legitimate ones for the city to bear.
Yeah.
Comments, Paul?
Thank you for the project update.
I'd just like to say a couple of things, because a couple times I've heard the word wall, and sometimes it's said buried wall, and just clarify what people will see, that
Sure.
there's no wall that's going to appear all of a sudden. Any of that work is going to be underground.
Underground.
No one's going to see it.
We'll let the
This will be-
engineer answer that, since I tend to use the non-engineer terms.
Yeah, but that's going to be underground to protect the infrastructure, and it's not going to be anything anybody sees after it's constructed, correct?
That's correct. It's going to be a series of piles that are buried below the ground.
Okay, just want to clarify that. And then you see what people may be seeing. I know you talked about some timelines, some things happening. We don't know yet. That'll be coming soon. But for now, it sounded like, I assume in the next couple of weeks that the property owner will be moving their wall out of our right-of-way so that we can start, assuming that everything goes on. You mentioned that, but I say, so they can see something start happening there in the pretty near future, to at least that start happening, right?
Yeah, I can't be specific about the timeline, and I wouldn't want to even say near future. I think we still need to communicate to them the exact start timeframe for our construction project, which is still in limbo a little bit until we get those bids. But we have communicated what we hope to do, and they have, as I've said, verified that they will be removing the portion of the buttresses in the public right-of-way ahead of our project.
All right, so that's the first thing people will see, is that being.
Likely, or PSE utility relocations, or some of the work on parcel 9 that the developer wants to do. But whichever piece comes first, and second, and third, all of that will be communicated once we know.
Okay, and then again, just to reiterate that, so after this, we're going to believe we have a structure and infrastructure that is protected and taken care of, so we don't have to worry about something happening again to it, because that should be, we're doing this additional
Yes.
infrastructure for that, and that the cost of that is still going to be in, we don't know because of the condition with the property owner. We're doing that now because we have to do it, take care of ourselves, but that's going to be in debate, I assume, of some sort, who's going to pay what as these, I don't want to say suits, but the negotiation prior to that of who's really
Yes.
responsible.
That's
So,
an accurate statement.
all right, so hopefully we can get some of that back in some way or another. Okay, all right, Shangri-La update. Next one.
Okay, so I'm going to update on 62nd, a couple of WashDOT projects, and then I'm going to let Brianne update on Trader Joe's, and Kurt will update on traffic calming. So on Southeast 62nd, the update is pretty clear in the written update, but I wanted to highlight some things for the community as well as the committee here, and that is that the week of the 19th, June 19th, the contractor's going to be doing night work so that they can relocate the North Fork of Issaquah Creek to its new channel. They're actually going to be working 24/7 there because they're going to have to do some dewatering and pumping and things like that the pumps have to stay on basically all day and night. So they're going to just make it go as fast as they can. So there's going to be night work for about night and day work for about 4 or 5 days next week. And then following that, the week of the 26th, they're going to actually close the remaining connections there at 221st, 4th, and 62nd. And that's in preparation for sheet piling to go in and the fill material to go in for the new roundabout. So a lot of work that's going to be seen and happening over the next 2 weeks there. Other things that are happening on the project are Costco has been doing their design work for their new buildings and the like, and they've come to us and asked for us to make some changes to the road project, mostly in the utility end of things. And then there's one driveway they want us to eliminate, but that's minor. The utilities and the other work that they're asking us to do and the specialty work that they've asked us to do at night rather than in the daytime has caused some increases in costs, which Costco will bear. But those costs are whittling away at the contingency, and we still have a long way to go. So just, a heads up that, probably during the 2018 budget request, you'll probably see a request to increase the authorization for expenditure on that, so we don't winnow away the contingency for the project, but the revenues will come in with Costco paying for it. So it's not like we're asking for more city money.
They'll pay eventually.
They'll pay, and they know that. So I just want to give the committee a heads up about that. Those are things that we're seeing on the radar screen. It's been an overall really good process and coordination with Costco on everything. It's just we're getting these requests, and it's like, oh, so we don't have all the dollars, we don't have schedule impacts or anything like that yet associated with it, but the contractor's currently working on a lot of that to get us some information.
Okay.
Watch that project. Go ahead.
I have a
I'm
question.
sorry.
So the agreement with Costco then for the cost sharing is we build it and they pay after, and they pay the additional after, or they've already paid their share for the project?
When we incur the costs, we'll
Then-
invoice them.
Okay. And then the second one is there's not very many residents that live over there, but sheet pile work is really loud and causes a lot of vibrations. How close is it to houses, and what have we done to let
It's
the neighborhood know
it's
about
about 800 feet from the closest home,
Okay.
and the sheet pile work is not at night. The driving of
I
that,
mean,
they're
even just
vibrating in
during the
place is going to be daytime.
Yeah.
We did have one complaint that came in for some of the night work as we had to do night hauling, and that complaint was related to the challenges that the contractor had of getting the material from the pit at night. They couldn't do that, so they had to stockpile it at the old Clark Towing property, and then they had to reload it and run it down the streets. So the people were hearing that activity around Clark Towing at night, but the work that they're doing with the North Fork and everything is considerably quieter than that. That's much quieter.
Okay.
Right, go ahead.
Anything else? So washout projects. The one that's probably on everybody's mind is the fish passage right there at East Lake Sammamish Parkway, the closure. I saw an email today from the inspector at WashDOT. They're looking to open the road earlier than Monday. Matter of fact, they're looking to open it, I want to say Friday night, Saturday.
Don't overpromise.
So-
Don't overpromise.
So I'm not
that one.
overpromising, I'm just saying what the email said, not overpromising or under-delivering. But it's good news.
Yeah,
The the project's been going smoothly. Contractors got the culvert in place, it's now backfilling, paving, things like that, which are weather sensitive, but they're trying to figure out how to make it all work. So, good thing.
So we're also going to have Front Street closed on
Sunday for fenders.
So they might have overlapped, but now they likely won't overlap.
Likely won't overlap
Oh,
now.
That's great.
And this won't mean an end to work there. I mean, the road will open, but they're still going to be working on both sides of that road.
They are
There'll
still going to be working.
Right,
It is
so
not
there's-
the end of the contract.
Right, so just people don't think all of a sudden it's all done, but they'll be out of the immediate roadway, but there'll be still stuff
Yeah.
happening around there.
Yeah.
Okay.
There'll still be work out there. There'll still be final lift of asphalt, there'll be striping, channelization, but
on
the
the
road
edges.
will, and work on the edges, but the road will, when they open it, it will be fully functional and usable again, so. That's all
That's all we
good.
care about right now. Thank you. Okay, next.
All right. The other WashDOT project, I just wanted to touch bases with the committee on, as well as the public. Today, the WashDOT held interviews for the consultants for the I-90 IJR. So in the next couple of weeks, WashDOT will have a selected consultant, and they will begin negotiating their contract. And the interviews went well. I participated in them. The committee was unanimous. I think if going the way it is, I think the consultant is going to be excellent to work with the community and get the right information to everybody. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to
Can I have a question
Brianne.
about the
Talk about,
IGR?
oh, I'm sorry.
Did we see a scope of work that the consultants were bidding on? Like, were they given a scope to say, here is what this project is? Did our council get a look at that?
The council did not get to look at any scope. WashDOT has scoped out what they think is the scope, but consultants don't bid on it. They have to present their statements of qualifications and
It's just
essentially
for
sell their
personal
services that way, because it's not legal for them to be considered on a cost basis. And the essential basis for any scope dealing with the IJR is set by FHWA. There is no ability to modify it. The IJR has to answer very specific policy
just wanted
questions
to
for
see it.
FHWA.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if we could see it.
Yeah, when it comes out.
Oh, so so the scope hasn't come out, so the consultants didn't get anything?
The consultants have
They
not
just
seen a
didn't-
scope,
Oh, okay. And it's not a public document yet?
not that I'm aware.
Okay.
All right, Brianne.
Update on our Maple Street roundabout, and just to refresh everyone's memory, that's our lovely little mini roundabout that's going in at Maple Street, Target, Trader Joe's driveway. We've been talking about that here at council before. So when we were here discussing this project improvements with you earlier this year, I heard that you guys wanted to get this built this year. So we began designing that in May, following your final action there in mid-April. And we've been on an accelerated design schedule to try and meet that 2017 goal. And tonight, you guys are faced with a couple options. So we, like I said, have been on this tight schedule trying to get 2017 to work. And we were bookended with our council discussions earlier in the year, and the priority of getting done before the holiday shopping season. And so you can see that in our conversations with both the Commons and Target, their holiday shopping season is roughly 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, although ideally they would like us out, November 1st. So with that and our schedule that we're on, that would give us 9 weeks for construction. So it's doable, but it's definitely tight. And that requires a one-touch award at council. So if this is something that we want to pursue with construction in 2017, this is the tight timeline that we're faced with, and that's where we're at with that one-touch council on August 7th. Naturally, we've got some risks associated with our schedule. Potentially not having contractors bidding. We know that this has turned into an unanticipated hot construction season. Sorry about that. And so while we always include some contingency and we always include some inflation, the construction bids that we've seen coming in have been exceeding those typical numbers. So it's a busy construction season, and then naturally weather is always a risk for schedule. So we want to be completely transparent with you guys. We know that you are the holders of the purse strings, and so this is where we're at with our budget. Naturally, we have not opened bids, so these are estimates. But the first phase is our final estimated construction is coming in here at 515 versus the 508 estimated budget. And then here at our Maple Trader Joe's, in both cases, our design was less expensive, but our construction here again is looking at the 75% design level is coming in higher than the budgeted amount. So again, these are numbers based solely on engineers' cost estimates, not on construction contractor bidders yet. But we are looking at our total complete streets budget at this point being about 10% over. So knowing that you guys like two touches, that's why we're here tonight, is to discuss. If you guys want to have two touches, knowing that we will likely be over budget, then we can pursue 2018 construction and wait until after the holiday season and start construction first quarter of next year. If getting it done this year is still a priority, then we will proceed with our fast track construction and design timeline, and we'll open bids at the end of July and come to you guys at the beginning of August. And if it's within budget, I'm hoping that's an easy award at August 7th council. If it's over budget, as it's estimated to be, then there again, you'd be faced with either awarding with additional funds that night, or you can always reject all bidders. And so then at that point, we would repackage it up, put it out to bid again later in the fall, and see what happens for that first quarter of 2018 construction. So just to give you some additional background information on where we're at, just for your information, naturally there's construction impacts. We are looking at a 3-week full 24/7 closure of Maple Street. It will require a Metro bus reroute, and it also does restrict delivery access for Trader Joe's specifically. We've been in constant contact with the Commons, as well as Target, who is separate. This is what the closure would look like. It would be closed all the way from Gilman, including that driveway there, with this being Trader Joe's and this being Target. This entrance to Target would remain open. We personally went and talked to the store managers of these businesses on this half early on and talked to them about, since they do have only these 2 entrances versus the other side, which has several. We discussed their delivery routes with them and what impacts that would have. So the pet store or Petco and Ross and those all have deliveries either at night or with smaller trucks, and they really would be minimally impacted. Trader Joe's has a very, very large delivery truck, and their normal route is to come off of Gilman and sneak back here, and cut through here. And the way that they cut through, they take the whole intersection. And so the final product is designed to accommodate that. But naturally, during construction, when we're pouring concrete and out there with crews, we can't accommodate that. So we have been in conversations with them about how they will need to alter their delivery. We've also been in contact with Target, and their delivery routes come in through this driveway, and so they're unaffected. So we've, like I said, been talking with them back since September, and then more recently as well, since we've started to dial in potential construction impacts and phasing. Their common concerns are naturally impacting customers during their back-to-school fall season, as well as the holiday season. That's their number one concern. Trader Joe's is concerned about the truck access. And the bottom line is that all of them want the least impact for the customer and their deliveries. So, coming back to our decision point tonight, we can, as I said, continue with our 2017 schedule. That would require awarding at council with one touch on August 7th. whether the project's over budget, and then it would require additional funds, or if it's within budget. Naturally, you do have that in your back pocket where you could reject all bids if it comes in crazy, and we try again in 2018. Or you could also tonight say, we really want to have 2 touches, knowing that it's projected to be over budget, in which case we will slow our roll and go for construction in early 2018. Discussion.
Yeah, you used the phrase decision point. Didn't see that one on the agenda.
I didn't need it.
And so you have not put out bids.
We're only at 75% design at this point. We just received 75% design from the consultant last week. And we reviewed those plans. So we're trying to come to you early, as early as we can with what we've got.
You thinking?
Yeah.
Fill in while he's thinking, and then I'll go.
So I think the 1 touch is fine for me personally, because this project has been daylighted just by the fact of how much pre-conversation we had this year. I think the presentation you did was great tonight. You laid it out really well. You laid it out really clearly. It is complicated because you're trying to redo something in an existing busy intersection. So you did a great job, and you've come really early. So that's all awesome. So I'm fine with just the 1 touch. I kind of personally, my opinion is that it seems like if it's a parks project, we can always find a way to do it. This was one of the most talked about projects in the bond, and so I really think the council ought to talk about it, even if it's over, and decide what to do. So thank you for bringing it early. That's great.
We're still thinking. I guess for 1 touch, I understand that looking that way, but I guess there's ways to maybe not quite so formal touches of that what we call. So as you're bringing this to us here, I would say we should bring it to council in a way to let them have the same information. So it doesn't feel like, so we'll come in, 3 of us will kind of be, in the know, and the 4 of them wouldn't. So with the 1 touch, I'd like to have an informal touch of letting them know the information that's coming. So then when it does come to 1 touch, it's really not a first touch. It's a second touch, in a sense. And as Mary Lou said, I think we've got a lot of public information on this. It's not a project that's coming in from the cold somewhere. And so, but I think I want to spread the information that we're getting to have the rest of the council just be aware of that, so they feel like it's a second touch. Sure. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can you put that schedule, the timeline on how the AB comes forward after bid?
This one?
So,
Right there.
yeah, so one possibility, what makes it awkward is, of course, the bid opening happens immediately preceding a council meeting, and probably after a packet deadline. So this kind of soft touch with the rest of the council members would likely have to happen at that second meeting in July, I'm assuming, and at that point, we still wouldn't have bid numbers for you.
Right.
So it would sound a lot like it sounds tonight, and I just want to make sure that's clear.
And I'm okay with that,
Okay.
because I'd rather have some information coming than no information and then a whole lot of information. It's like, prep me for it coming, right? And so, and I don't even know, here's a technical thing. This could be information, could be shared at the work session on the 10th maybe. It's just information sharing to let them know, but we could make a formal council on the 17th and just, at least I don't want 4 people to be blindsided, and 3 of us sit there go, yeah, we know about that, that's cool. So we need to do that. I'm okay whether we did it at a work session, if that's okay, technically correct or not, but this information I think needs to be shared, so that when the 1 touch comes, we're ready to talk about it seriously and then make a decision, right? And we have the choices, you laid them out, it was very clear. We can always reject everything, or we could see what's there, and like I say, if it comes in where you are, it's a simple decision. It's we're already appropriated, so it may be a very simple thing.
So a follow-up question for you, Bill.
ahead.
So then it sounds like Brianne wanted something from us tonight, from the three of us, in terms of the, stay with the 2017 and keep going, or tonight, do you want to push it to 218?
Yeah, no.
I was for 217.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's what I was
right.
thinking about as well, is that, do we already know enough that maybe we shouldn't even bother this year? That's what I was kind of thinking about. Or go on the plan that you have. So the plan says on August 7th, we can make a go, no go. And I do agree with Bill. I think it's there was information shared tonight about the length of a closure, the work that you've done to communicate with those businesses that are impacted, the timing specifically about their concerns, the time of seasons. So the getting everybody on the council that information in advance of August 7th would be a good idea.
Okay.
So is that clear enough direction on the main question, as you said, is 17 or 18? And we're saying 17 and get more information out in whatever way we.
Sure, and I think maybe city administration will have a little conversation with council leadership on what that looks like on July 17th, because I think there are a couple different opportunities we can explore just to share the information,
Right.
since there wouldn't be action the council would be taking.
Right, and that's why I'm okay with the technical way, whether it be work session, whatever you guys, I think it just needs to be shared. And then we'll get into technical. So let's make sure, are we covering this question of 17 or 18 and then going on to other questions?
Actually, I don't think we're covering the 17-18 question. I think the question we're covering is go forward and put the bids out. And on August 7th, we'll make a 17-18 decision.
Yeah.
Right, or the question they proposed to us, we could
She had
actually
one
right
tonight
now
that just
say
said
go to
Right,
18.
right,
We're
And
saying
that,
no.
and we're saying no to
Right.
that
Yeah.
decision now.
Right.
So
So we're
clear-
saying go forward.
go
with
forward now.
But we can still,
Yeah,
we
we
still
are.
have the 18
You still reserve the
option.
right
Right.
to change that.
Full council always reserves that right.
Yep.
This is just
Okay.
maybe a suggestion, Mr. Chair, on top on when you do your report out on Monday, you could just give 3 high-level points too, that it's going out to bid now, it's expected to come in higher, it requires a 3-week closure, if those were the 3 things that you pulled out of it, and then also that a presentation. Just to give them a heads up that it does require that. I think the 3-week closure is something significant too.
Yeah, and just because I have some other information, I guess, in the design and how construction, you all have done some thought and decided that a 3-week full closure is better than a partial closure for 9 weeks. Be aware of that, and that was with some assistance. So it's deciding to do it all and get it done in a shorter time frame than take a long time to get it. So that's one of the things, and hopefully that would actually reduce cost a little bit than.
It does absolutely reduce
Yeah,
cost.
so
yes.
that could be a thing in our favor.
And we also made that decision after talking to the Commons and Target as well.
Right, okay. So then, technical questions on this project.
Not on this project.
Anything, Paul?
Nope.
I do. So as I'm thinking about this, and I actually ride behind Trader Joe's all the time on my bike, and I cut through the backside, and I see these big trucks, and I know where how they come in, and I've often wondered, because I've never seen one going out.
Yeah.
And so, how they get out is pretty amazing.
Yes.
But when we put, in that they actually go through there in the daytime, and the cars have to really back off and let them through for them to do that. When we put the roundabout there, how are they going to get through? Because they're going to have to go backwards through the roundabout. Because if they come out of there and try to go through there, they're going to have to cut across.
They just go over it. So the roundabout curb is
Right.
designed that it would be
No, I'm not-
uncomfortable for a car to go up and over.
No, I'm
but
not worried about the
very-
curb. No, you're not hearing my
Okay.
question. Physically, they can do it.
Yes.
Is if they're coming out here from church and they're turning left, they're going to go backwards across traffic and oncoming traffic. It's not going over the roundabout. That's not the question. If someone's coming out of Target and coming into Trader Joe's, they're actually going head to head. So my question is how this is going to function with that.
That truck
think-
has to wait for the intersection to be clear, just like it does today.
Today, and it
Because
just
today
makes
it
its way
goes
out.
straight through the entire, I mean, it
Right, it
blows
just
through
takes
the
everything.
intersection, the entire thing. So
Right.
it's gonna have to do the same thing and wait for
The
the
same thing
intersection
and
to be
just
clear.
wait through there. And we're
Yeah.
going to, and we are going to consider that a safe route for a truck to take as a city now. I mean, they're going against traffic regulations, so I'm just, you know, if we're designing that as a safe way for a truck to get in, and that's obviously going against traffic.
Yeah, we continue to have conversations with Trader Joe's about how they might be able to service the store a little bit better.
Yeah.
And, you know, their trucks come, every store has different operations. Some schedule them so that they're in the wee hours. Trader Joe's gets deliveries throughout the whole day and hasn't dictated what size truck can come. So they have some options on their side too, if it becomes a concern or a liability issue.
I think at this point it is, because they're actually going to be going against the official flow of traffic. Now they're going with flow, although they're taking a lot of room. So I think that needs to be a discussion, I guess, from a traffic safety standpoint. I encourage to have that as well. Okay. All right. So are we good with Trader Joe's?
Yep.
Okay.
So I have a very brief update about Newport, 54th to SR 900. So we have been busy with this project, and we wanted to share where we've been at with that. So just a refresher, or Newport Way, SR 900 to 54th, we're in the very early stages of a preliminary design for that entire corridor. And the goals for that project are to maintain or enhance the corridor character, design for future traffic on the corridor, design for improved pedestrian, bicycle, and roadway crossings, and design for traffic access to the residents. So I came to you maybe last month and showed you our little funnel about our workshop and our HOA meetings, and this is our neighborhood engagement process and the input that we're continuing to take. And so in this last week, we just had our 2 workshops, Wednesday night, last night, and the prior Wednesday. And the first workshop, we had 24 attendees. We did a not quite so brief presentation about the engineering considerations on the corridor, traffic analysis, talking about bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and talking about the intersection control options. And then we split up into 4 groups to really dig in and examine the corridor. And we got some great feedback, and we had some very engaged residents, and it went, I believe it went really, really well. It was a great two-way opportunity for a two-way dialogue where we got to share some of the factors that make this corridor complicated. And by the end, the residents absolutely recognize it's complicated. And they had the opportunity to share things with us that they've been concerned about with the corridor. And so at the end of workshop 1, we had wide support for the 3-lane section. We heard from them that the things that they have a hard time with are really getting in and out of their neighborhoods, and that they do support enhanced pedestrian facilities as well as enhanced bicycle facilities. And there's also a large frustration with poor driver behavior. So we've heard a lot about drivers out there making poor decisions and not necessarily following the rules that we would like them to follow. So we went between those 2 workshops, and at that initial workshop, we just had a scroll with an aerial photo and the right-of-way lines, and allowed residents to completely tell us what they felt. And so coming back with that second workshop, we had a concept, and it was a 3-lane concept based on the support that we had heard from the first night. And we had a presentation where we did a brief recap of the previous week. We really talked about the benefits of the 3-lane section and how that 3-lane section does a lot to solve some of their access issues. We also further talked into the details of signal and always stop intersection control warrants, and showed a lot of different pictures of examples of the different design elements that we had talked about previously. And then we split up into 2 groups and took a look at the proposed concept and its alternatives. And you can see, again, we had really engaged residents and a great group, and a really good dialogue where they had a chance to take a look at that concept and have some reactions. There was a lot of times where I think that they really endorsed what had been put on paper. And then there was some alternatives out there where we discussed, is this what we want to see, or does this suit better? And so we got a lot of great feedback from that. And so that was just last night. Haven't had a chance to dig through my notes and pull out all of our great feedback, but a couple highlights is we did hear from the community that they want an additional touch point regarding developments. We also heard that there's a little bit more conversation, I think, to be had about some of the different intersections, specific intersections, and the intersection control at those locations. And we also heard that there's a desire in some areas to think about minimizing the width of the cross-section to save some trees and some environmental areas. So where we have a 3-lane section and a median in the center, maybe there's some areas that we want to narrow that up a bit. So these are all things that we are going to take back and digest. Like I said, it was a really busy week with the 2 workshops, and we're going to further refine the concept and look at the different alternatives that had some support, do some research on the critical areas. We haven't had that quite catch up to our process yet. And then also circulate the concept internally for other city staff, fire department, emergency services, maintenance and operations, school district. We also need to touch base with WashDOT because of the SR 900 signal and their limited access, and City of Bellevue to look at their plans for the future. So we've got some collaborating to do with some additional agencies as well as internal departments. And once we have gotten that concept a little bit more refined, we, at the end of last night, asked the neighborhood, we told them that we had intended for our next touch point with the community to be these neighborhood or HOA meetings. And when we asked, does that feel like that's appropriate? Does that feel like that's the level that we should be at and the direction that we're going? And I think maybe unanimously, show of hands, showed that, yeah, that was the next step. So after we are able to catch up a bit and get some more information that we can take back, then we're going to go out and take it in 1 or 2 neighborhood groups at a time so that we can kind of keep these a little bit smaller scale so we can have these really in-depth conversations that we've been having and really dig into how their neighborhood works and how their access point on Newport Way works. So that's what we did for Newport Way. That's a Newport Way update.
All right, questions?
So Brianna, in these new conceptual plans, is it still a 30-mile-an-hour road? Or
Yes.
so it doesn't drop down in speed even with the intersection controls, roundabouts, whatever, it's still a 30-mile-an-hour?
30-mile-an-hour road, correct.
Cool process.
I appreciate the report. It's come a long way since we just got verbal updates from Sheldon. So thank you for this level of update, this level of detail.
You might
on
not
such
get
a
it for
highly
every
critical
project.
road. Is that? No, and I understand I understand that very well, but I know this is very fresh on your mind as well. So it's a good, much appreciated, timely update. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for all staff that were there at these meetings and so forth. We had a good representation, and the consultant did a very good job as well. All right. Any other further updates?
I'm going
You got
to
one.
talk to you just a little bit about where we are on some traffic calming
Okay.
initiatives in the city. Just one, before I do, I wanted to just especially appreciate, I think Brianne did a great job in helping to organize and make the workshops as successful as they were, along with the consultant team. And the other, and it really was an engaged community. So these, and we said this to the folks that attended, and I just want everyone to hear that these aren't the end of the process, they're really the beginning of the process. And it's a great start, and we know we have a lot more work to do, and we know we need to continue to keep the community engaged throughout the process, and we intend to do that. So that's enough about Newport for now. And I just briefly wanted to share with you all that we So traffic calming and protecting neighborhoods from excessive volumes and speeds of traffic is a high priority to us in transportation. And we wanted to let you know that we're hearing from several neighborhoods. So you're familiar with Old Town and the concerns there and the issues there. And we've started to collect some data in Old Town, and we're planning to move forward in the second half of this year with a traffic calming program for Old Town. But just to let you know, so Old Town isn't the only place in Issaquah that has that we've that folks have let us know that there are traffic calming potential issues. And so Highlands, there's certainly some issues up there. Taos is another area. Black Nugget Road. There's numerous places around the city, and I just wanted to let you know that we're working on all of those. We're developing a process that generally follows a process of gathering data, getting the information first, analyzing that data, and then the next steps, of course, are a neighborhood community engagement process, going out and actually talking to neighbors and understanding better what their concerns are and sharing the data with them and looking at solutions. We know that this isn't something that Public Works Engineering is going to implement on our own. There's a lot of interdepartmental coordination that needs to happen with Eastside Fire and Rescue and our operations department and the police department and others. And so, it's a cross-departmental effort to be successful in working with the neighborhoods. And then ultimately, this is not about talking about traffic calming, but it's about implementing solutions. So, from a budget standpoint, just to let you all know, you have put aside $100,000 for traffic calming in Old Town, but we haven't talked about traffic calming in these other areas. And just sort of heads up, let you know that there's likely to be other areas in town where we need to talk about that. And so that's for future conversation. Don't need anything from you tonight other than just to let you know where we're at. So.
Good on that one?
Yeah, thanks. That's
Okay.
awesome.
Is that the last of the ones you want to highlight?
It is.
All right.
That's a question
See a
for
question
better.
on any ones other than the ones they've highlighted?
Yeah, what is the 43rd roundabout study?
Sheldon.
The 43rd roundabout study was a study to take a look at the bypass lane,
Oh, that's the
and
plan?
it came out of the
Yeah.
crossing study,
Okay,
and so it's an evaluation of what to
Okay.
do there.
thanks.
In the I-90 shoulder use study project, in the current status, does include the phrase, it does say, working to address Northwest Sammamish Road pinch point. So that's current. Still working to address it. Do you have any kind of update there for us at all?
I'm glad you asked that question, because yes, I actually had a meeting earlier this week with WashDOT, and we had provided a graphic of what we would need on a minimum basis to try and fit something through there. And technically, WashDOT thinks it's a doable thing. There's still a process that WashDOT and the city will have to go through with FHWA to get permission to use the limited access area. So it's not completed yet, but it looks like it's technically viable.
So there's mention in here of an open house on June 20th.
I was.
Yeah, and there's the open house on June 29th that WashDOT is holding.
Where is that going to be?
Tibbetts
I think
Manor,
it's Tibbetts, I
we
think.
better double check on that. I believe it's, and so that's a WashDOT open house. We're attending, I'm attending. We want to, I think WashDOT wants to share what's going on and what they know and listen to the community. And so we're certainly planning to be there to represent Issaquah and to hear what concerns Issaquah residents have, so.
So Issaquah residents are invited to this one?
It's an open house.
Yeah, it's a
It's an
public
open house,
For
yes,
Issaquah
yes,
And
yes.
where will it be? So when we get more of those details, could you please let us know? And let's share that.
Absolutely, yes. I know
And
it's
I
on the
think-
29th, and I don't want to,
Okay, that's fine. We can follow up on that. Thank you.
perfect.
And that should be noticed in the
So our-
normal public notice ways.
Absolutely. In fact, it's on our website.
I was going to say.
And
I saw
our
it.
website says June 29th, 5 to 8 p.m., Tibbetts Creek Manor.
That was the
Alright.
only one I had to ask about, thank you.
Yes, all right. Anything else?
Not on
Mary Lou?
those. I had some questions on the development projects,
Okay,
which is the bottom of the list.
go right ahead.
I guess one general question was Gateway Apartments, Gateway Senior, Riva, Bergsma, they're all on that same piece of Newport Way. How does that get integrated into the community conversation about what the corridor looks like? Did those specific projects also come up as well?
So there's a couple ways to answer that. So at the workshop, specifically in last night's workshop, we had about 20-foot long, we had two of these 20-foot long roll plots that show the entire corridor. And so they show all the, and then in addition to that, we had so we have given our consultants all the information from all the developments and so there is a plan that shows where all those improvements are and what they're proposed to be now. So, so we know that developments along that corridor are of major interest to everyone who is interested in Newport Way, especially the folks that live along there. And we haven't really figured this out. We shared with you that the community, certainly the folks that we talked to at both workshops, are very interested in seeing how and understanding how the developments integrate with the corridor plan. And we don't have the details of this figured out because we just heard it loud and clear once again last night. And there's a lot happening quickly on that project, but it's our intent now, our plan now is to probably have a third meeting with that community, focused more on the development
okay.
part of things, and so that we can, so I think there's, what I'm hearing is there's a need, the community wants to better understand how these developments, what they are, what their improvements are, how they fit with a corridor that we're talking about. And so we agree with that, and we think that's important for them to understand how those developments will fit into the overall design. We've got a lot of moving pieces. We're trying to move all this forward in some kind of a reasonable, logical manner. So that's our, we've had 2 workshops in the last week. So so we haven't, as Brianne said, we haven't sorted through everything, but that's our plan for
Okay,
now.
So it ties all those pieces together
Yes.
then at some, okay, awesome, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions, Paul?
No.
On updates? It was a no? All right.
Thank you.
So, I'm glad that 15-minute agenda item
Yeah.
took an hour. All right. So much for our 45-minute meeting. All right. So our next topic is the regional agenda. And, well, yes, I'm sorry. We'll do some public comment on this before we move on. So any public comment? Any public comment on the updates? One at a time. Take your turn.
Justin Walsh, 2196 Shy Bear, and candidate for position 3. One of the things that I would add, as we move forward, if there are going to be large cost overruns, I've been hearing a lot of concerns from council currently that they're not getting kind of the pre-touch on that, and I think that's also vastly important because there's nothing worse than a $1.3 million surprise. You need a little bit of time to prep for that and to take that in. The other thing, I just echo Councilmember Ramos's comment regarding the potential for liability at the new roundabout at Trader Joe's. Yeah, if the city does have specific knowledge that Trader Joe's is using that antithetical to traffic laws, it very much could place them on the hook should you get an errant driver that makes that, because the city then had knowledge that that was going on and did nothing to fix it. So I just have a big concern that you know, they can go out the way they came in, and that would work just as fine to get them in and out rather than going counter to traffic. And those are just my only two comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Ken Eastman, resident of Tallis, so I was really interested to hear the update about fixing Shangri-La Way and the wet utilities, the infrastructure. It's kind of amazing that that's going to cost us $2.5 million, and that's just the city piece of the problem. I would suggest after we get over sticker shock, we have to take a deep breath and say, but it isn't going to get any cheaper, and it's got to be fixed. And I think the entire community needs to see some action up there. I would encourage all of the city council to appropriate those funds, and let's get to it. But I think there's got to be a lesson in there, and that is the city's on the hook for $2.5 million, and Parcel 9 is still not solved. The plastic is still on there, needs to be on there, or it's going to slide again. And take a look at the bonding, please. Might be a $180,000 bond to insure us against multi-million dollars worth of risk. And if we don't learn from that lesson, we're going to do it all over again on all these developments. I mean, the language is pretty clear. I've read it that says the city needs to protect itself and the residents and the taxpayers. And you're supposed to collect a bond 1.5 times the risk. And we didn't do it there. And we need to take a good look at that. I don't know what's going on with the pump station. That's city infrastructure. It's been sitting there for a year. I never see anybody working on it. And word on the street is the city's holding J.R. Hayes up on that. But we're tired of looking at our playground that's all disrupted. It's got construction fencing around it, and I never see anybody working there. So it's at a dead stop as far as I could tell. Pipeline is sitting there with orange fencing around it going up the hill. There's another ugly eyesore. This is all infrastructure. So why isn't J.R. Hayes finishing that? And what delays are the city imposing on them is the question that I would ask. But once again, you know, this is development issues tucked away in Tallis that I would ask that you pay attention to. And residents are very upset and frustrated by it. And then I guess I would just offer one last comment, and that is, you know, when we're working on these development projects, let's think about how to do it right the first time so that we don't have to go in later. And I know that's easy to say, you know, hindsight is 20/20, but there are a lot of costly projects that, as I sit in the audience, that we're all going to have to pay for, that maybe if we did a better job at the beginning, we wouldn't be on the hook for. So whether that's the AA Creek reroute when that development was put in, maybe that should have been done right the first time, or maybe when those shopping centers were put in, maybe we should have put that roundabout in the first place. As I said, it's easy to criticize, and I understand how complicated this is, but when we don't do it right the first time and get the developers to pay for it, the citizens are on the hook. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm Mary Lynch at 2690 Northwest Oakcrest Drive. I also wanted to talk a little bit about extended hour permits and Saturdays, plus also nighttime. And one of the things we didn't know when Gateway was going to start their generators, that those were going to be running all night. So with the 62nd, please make sure that those people know it's going to be running all night and the police don't get called. Do the appropriate type of notification to them and other people who may be going by, because also one of those generators was blowing a bunch of smoke, and I think somebody called the police or the state police when they saw it from the I-90, so be aware of that those things could happen. I also have asked about 2 weeks ago with the central area or the capital improvement plan. I had see nothing on the docket for the PFAS and what's happening there. When I go to that website, it's not been updated, I think, in about 5 months, as is the TALUS, has not been updated since March. And those things need to know, especially if they are going to come up for the council. People want to come to those and want to know about it. So knowing about it on Friday that it's going to be on agenda on Monday is not adequate notice for the public. And so updating said it may be. They can always not come, but you need to give people proper notice to be able to come and attend meetings when there's going to be some major decisions so that they can give public input. I do want to compliment the meetings that we have had out the last two on Newport Way are good. They have taken a lot of time at a very busy time when everything else is going on, but we got as many people as we could there. We would like to hopefully get some of the information on the website as soon as we can, so we can also inform people what did go on, because it's really hard to just talk about things. And because there is not trust in the community out there, us just saying that happens doesn't really mean a whole lot. So we need to have the presentations put online in a timely fashion. The other thing that Bree didn't really talk about, Kurt kind of alluded to it. Our other big concern is if you look at the schedule, it's saying that the roundabout for Gateway and all these other things are going to start this summer, June and July. And the biggest concerns that we had at that meeting is, number one, we don't feel that Public Works was properly inputted in the development side of this and or got their chance to talk. And right now, it looks like we're going ahead and we'll have to redo those roads once again if we allow the development on those roads and those road sections to go ahead before the at least 20% of the plan that they said is going to be done sometime in January of this year or the next year. So we would like to see more immediate interface with the consultants and Public Works with the development staff, finding out where those projects are, and it's just not a matter of turning the paper over. But, you know, we were telling the consultants actually what the design was, because they hadn't even had a chance to look at it. So we need now on this project and going forward, there's got to be more integration of what's happening with Public Works, the development staff, and the community when you're talking about infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. All right. Public comments concluded. Now we'll get to the regional agenda. Thank you all for those comments. So we have this carried over from April when we worked on it then, and I'm gonna say a few things, and please correct if I'm wrong from memory and so forth. But we were given a task from the council to work on the transportation regional item and the regional objective agenda, and we looked at that. And then Paul, you also brought us one that you had worked up to expand on that versus the original one we had. So then we talked about that a little bit, and I don't remember getting to a conclusion, which we have to do here tonight to get it back to council. But I think you said there were some suggestions and some things that haven't been incorporated, you're saying, into what we talked about that night to this version of it. So can you tell us what you think on that? You've got some.
But just to be clear, on April 20th, I think it was the April 20th infrastructure meeting, we spoke for quite a long time,
We
well
did.
over an hour on many of these issues, and it was a really good conversation.
Mm-hmm.
There were a number of suggestions that were made at that time by this committee for some changes to the content as it was. What's in today's packet, what we got delivered, doesn't reflect any of those changes. So So we don't have that in front of us to actually talk about what I would have expected to be the next version. I'm not sure, I don't know why none of them are there. So I mean, I did go back and watch and listen to it, and so I made some notes, but I don't know really what the right way to proceed forward is, because they're not in the packet. I'm not sure why those changes, nothing was made. So just so, for example, some of them were pretty simple clarifications. Objective A, which is titled "Slow the Growth of Regional Pass-Through Traffic." We had a lot of conversation about, is that really the right statement? And we probably we need to settle upon that. But one
Right.
that was more clear in the action item list, number 3 says add capacity to SR 900. I think it was really clear that we were talking about both that at that intersection of 17th and 900, but also south, in the direction of Renton. I mean, the committee talked about that. So let's change that action to add capacity to SR 900, both in the north and the south components. So that's not reflected here. Right, so, and we had quite a bit of conversation about, Mary Lou had brought up the point about, should we think about, especially when it comes to the RTSI effort, do we have different objectives even for that effort that might be different for the South? Because it's one of the dividing lines, and I think that's still true, the different caucus areas is north of I-90 and south of I-90. I hadn't heard anything different. You guys were on the working group, so I'm looking at, yeah, right, RTSI. So again, we talked about that on April 20th, and that language isn't in here. So I can go on, I have more
Right.
notes upon that.
So hearing that, you're recalling that too, and we didn't get these in here for whatever reason, I guess at this point, we need to get this back to council. So let's just go through, and do you remember comments as well, Mary Lou? You have some? Or you not? Let's just
So
look
when I
at-
looked at the packet, I was a little confused because it's not in track changes. So we've touched it so many times and I'm
Right.
completely
Yeah.
confused as to what it is. But I did see the email from the city manager, or city administrator, that has a lot of talking points in it. And I agree with what Paul said, where that sounds familiar. I think
Right.
that's what we did at the meeting. So I think we should go through the city manager's email as well, and make sure those are, I think, his thoughts on what he heard that night in our conversation. And then maybe just walk through the document and tweak it and hand it in.
And I guess the main thing is we're going to start with this piece that Paul put together versus the other one. So if we're going to start with this one, that's the first decision to make, and I think
And
that's
that's
where
what
we
we
are, right?
reviewed in detail back on
Right.
April 20th.
Yeah,
So
all right.
I
So make
just
sure
assume
we're-
that's the
so going with
baseline
that.
going forward.
Okay, so I think at this point, let's just go through them objective at a time, and remember what your comments were, or what you have for this one, and we'll figure it out tonight. Make sense? All right, so I think the first one was, I think you're right, Paul, on the first objective, I think is not worded so well, which is slow the growth of regional pass-through traffic. And now there's a lot of discussion on that, I remember that. So do you have a better name for that first objective
Well,
from either of you?
we didn't get to, well, so where it was left back in April was at this level, and Mary Lou had made a number of suggestions. You use phraseology like, let's manage it to the north, let's slow it to the south. That's kind of where it was left. We just kind of had those out there as maybe splitting it that way, or keeping it as one objective, and maybe in the different way that we status it, we would highlight that
Right.
there's really multiple, there's potentially two ways to looking at it.
Is it possible, Emily, to get the words up there on the part of the agenda that this is from?
I'm trying to think of how to get through this.
So, and just to throw a wrench in the works, when we had our retreat last week, and we did our fictitious little map for 2050 or whatever it was pretty clear that there were some areas in town drawn out where we expected over time to see car traffic reduce. And I can't remember what we were calling them, pedestrian something blah blah zones, and drew a dotted line around Front Street in Old Town, drew a dotted line in the very, very core of central Issaquah. And so I'm not even sure if slow the growth is appropriate. And based on the conversation we had at the retreat, it was more like get regional pass-through traffic on a regionally designated route and get the heck off Front Street. And that's pretty much what came out of the retreat. It wasn't slow the growth, it was put it in a different place, put that traffic in a different place, around.
Okay.
That was last week.
So hearing what you're saying there, and I guess for the regional agenda here, to me, this is, and you're right about talking 20, 30 years out as we were looking at that picture. This to me is kind of like a 2-year,
Yeah.
right? It's
Then
17,
reduce.
18, 17, 18. So what are we going to try to do in 17 and 18, the rest of
Reduce.
18 and 17?
Reduce
And what
instead
can
of
we
slow.
actually do in that time period? Because a lot of things that we talk about here, we've got a lot of these things already, they're rolling. I mean, the things on 18, the things on Hobart, I mean, there's a lot of things that are already, we've been working on them for a
Well, they're on
while.
plans.
And they're plans, or they actually, things are happening. So my question, if we have something happening, is that something should be on the regional agenda? Because this is what we're trying to get, is next things we want to get done. If we've already got, the IJR on, I-90 and Front Street, well, that's in the works. So that, I wouldn't be thinking I need that in the agenda that we're going to be pushing to other folks at that time. That's already in the process. So if we look at what we can, I see it as what we can get done in this next year and a half or so, and focus on those abilities, not what's going to take 5 or 10 years, and not what we've already done the work on, and it's starting to happen. So if we narrow that a little bit to that, we might be able to work with this a little better. Does that make some sense?
Reduce the traffic on Front Street. That's what I would say. Front Street now carries 29,000 vehicles, ADT, about 10,000 more than SR 900 does. We're not talking about that it should have 32,000 in the next 2 years. We got to start working our way back to where we need to be. So I actually think what we have up there is lukewarm at best. I think it should say reduce or reduce the traffic on Front Street, plain simple.
So just kind of, so if you put that as an objective, what action would you do in the next year and a half to make that happen? Because I want to have some actions to follow that.
The point is that if I fill out the actions column, you're going to have 6 other council members who either don't agree with that objective or don't agree with the actions. So I'm not really sure how we do this in a committee of 3. My opinion of this agenda generally is that it's not strong enough, and that as a person who is out there today telling the community or meeting with other people and telling them what we want, I don't see it in here. For me, slow growth of regional traffic, well, what's okay? We have 29,000 cars a day on Front Street. Is 35 okay? Is that a slow enough change? I mean, we're heading in the wrong direction. And so I'm fine. You can leave it the way it is, and I will just speak to it at the council meeting. But my big hope when this came up 2 or 3 years ago was that this was a paper that we use to drive the work that we do out in the region. And to me, it just seems to be, what chair are we sitting in? It's frustrating. I don't see action in here. I see, what chair are we sitting in? I find it frustrating. So I may just take a pass tonight and let you and Paul play with the words, but to me, it's not a strong enough document yet. It's not an actionable document yet. If I were to go sit on, pick an example, you go down to reduce internal driving. If I were to go to sit on someone else's committee, I wouldn't know why I'm sitting in that chair. And I thought that's the whole point we had this. So I would go with saying we should be bolder, and this should be an action plan thing. And to me, it's more like we're still sitting in chairs, we're still holding hands, and we'll get there someday kind of document, which I find frustrating. So I might just let you two work on it, bring it to the rest of the council, and whatever. Because I think if I just start telling you what the words are, I don't think the other council members are going to agree. We haven't really talked about it like that. So.
Okay. So with that, why don't, you want to go, or
Yeah,
say what you want?
This topic, what it still lacks really is a higher level vision for and comprehensive strategy for what we need to do for mobility and traffic. And this is a tool, this is a regional agenda for things that we can do in the next year or so and should be focusing on. Now, when I brought in some of this language, I mean, some of your guys' first reaction was, wow, that you just kind of changed our focus of this. We took it to a different level. And maybe that bastardized what we were trying to do within a regional agenda, given the time frame, the objectives. But we lack this greater framework, this greater strategic framework that we haven't agreed to. So some of what this is really kind of my first couple, back in March or so, attempt to describe what I think maybe that should be. It's about, and it includes some objectives and some very concrete things too. I mean, there's a lot of references. This collectively talks about, that there are, multiple roadways and making, whether they be efficiency or capacity improvements to them. It talks about transit in so many ways by talking about reducing drive-alone trips, but without really, so that I think that context of a larger framework, strategic framework, is missing behind this. This is just pulled out. This was an attempt to do that, but within this regional agenda framework that we were already working within. I think, Mary Lou, you've said a number of times about, we're going in the wrong direction. We need to reduce. I haven't yet heard how you propose to do that either. And I think if this is something that you think fits within the regional agenda for what we're trying to do here, then I would encourage you to at least, let's have that conversation.
It can be as simple as, Kurt and Sheldon and Keith and I were talking earlier in the week about if you've got your road network and you got to move regional traffic to where it ought to be, you're going to have to make some hard choices and do some things. And some of it's engineering that makes traffic turn off of the exit at Front Street onto Gilman, onto SR 900 or SR 900 in Newport and off of Front Street. So it was a combination of engineering, the way the road looks, how pedestrian friendly it is, but they were all kind of engineering solutions. I mean, I don't know what actions it is. It's just that the whole point is that Front Street is a local arterial that functions as a regional failing arterial, failing commuter route, whatever you want to call it. And none of this here does anything for that. And so I think we have to have an objective so that when we're sitting at the table at RTSI, when we're sitting at the table with the IJR, at any of those times, we know that we all agree that the goal is Front Street's going to be Front Street again. And that plays into every conversation we have with all these different partners. But if you don't say it like that, I think we just go to the table and talk about what everybody else wants to talk about. So I'm not, when we talked about why do the Issaquah Hobart Road study, we wandered off into a conversation that said, well, maybe Front Street could handle 50,000. I'd argue it can't handle 30. So you got to have a clear objective and slow the growth of regional pass-through traffic. We could slowly work our way to 50 and call ourselves a success of meeting that objective. Yeah. If we're at 50 in 10 years, we could say, well, we slowed it. I mean, that's what that objective does. It doesn't solve anything. And so I think the idea of doing this was good. As far as it being useful for council members and mayor and everybody out in the community, and for the community to read it and understand what we're doing for them, I don't see it here. And maybe we won't get there this year. Maybe this is what we do this year. But we need to have bigger, braver, bolder statements. And whether we know how to get there, at least we should know where we want to go. We're smart enough, we'll figure out how to get there. But we should know where we want to go. And this to me is checking the box that it would be okay if we had 50,000 vehicles on Front Street in 5 years. Because at least we slowed it.
Okay, so
Bill,
yeah.
how are we going to get that done?
Just for clarification, I'm pretty certain we never had a conversation about let's get Front Street to 50,000. I know we never had that conversation.
Oh, not that it could.
Or that
if
we talked
Issaquah
about.
Hobart Road is made to feed traffic more efficiently into town, we might be able to handle 50,000. That's a practicality, not a desire. I want to see less than what we have now, not more. I don't care how efficiently you move it through town. You'll be moving it through town from 8 in the morning till midnight. I just don't want it here. It doesn't belong on Front Street. Front Street's not a regional road. You have to stop thinking of it as a regional road. It's just not a regional road.
All right. Well, this is, I think, the toughest of the 6 or 7 of them here.
It's just skimming ahead.
Welcome, Bob. And getting that to some point of, we have to get something back to council. They gave us a task. We had something, so we have our task here to do. So the question is, what do we want to get back to them? And I don't think we want to get something back to them so controversial that, 4 of the people are blindsided by something that is.
Exactly, because we're not
So,
all the same.
that's not what we want to do. If we want to do that, we need to take another route. But,
Okay, so for a regional agenda, so in this first objective, and especially if you look at the actions, especially, 2, 3, and 4, the scope of this are the major roadways, at least that would affect things that happen in the south part of town, including on 900 and Hobart Road in particular. So if you think of this as those as the major arterials for carrying, especially in the PM, traffic, congestion traffic, it addresses 18 and 900 and Hobart. And that's the scope of this. We can do some things there. We have to work at these, if we're going to have an impact and slow what would come otherwise. There's do nothing and it's going to grow at a certain rate just because of what's happening in the region. But we can do something and slow that rate and slow that growth, at least that impact on us. And so it's an attempt to name 18, 900 and Hobart Road as key parts of that. Okay, what can we do in the near term? Now we go way beyond that, right? Because we're not going to add capacity to 18 in the next couple of years. But it's the idea of having a legislative agenda and starting to drive for that. We know about the interchange at 18 and 90. Right, and that's going to happen. But what about the actual capacity of that highway south of there, from getting that from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, from 90 to to where it's 4 lanes further south, and 900. There was a conversation, and Bob, who's here now, did note that and brought that up in our meeting back in April, that there are conversations going on about potential. Roundabouts on that corridor to improve its capacity and efficiency as well. Okay, so that needs to be in the scope of our conversation as well with our regional agenda. And then the Hobart Road is already something, like you said, it's ongoing. Do we have to advocate for it? No, I guess, and so I think that's a good question of the usefulness of this tool, but it's not done.
Right.
There's going to be some results, a study, a report that's delivered to us, and we're going to want to assess that. And who knows if there's going to be real action in the near term. So, Bill, if it's just to you and I, talking about this, that's really the context of this one. Is that it's of the roadways that have the most impact on and their use and their contribution to the congestion in Issaquah. We're naming 18, 900 in the Hobart Road.
So let me throw out something here. I think you've got a couple of things jotted down on some changes we suggested last time on this thing overall. And I'd like to get to those, and I'd like to address a little bit of that. So I've got an interesting thought here, so listen up. So how about under A, slow the growth of regional pass-through traffic, period, and a sub-thing under that of saying, long-term, work towards Front Street becoming more pedestrian-friendly. Because what you're saying is that's like an out goal. It's something we can't really achieve, and I'm not going to put action on it. But what we're saying is, if we're looking at regional roads, working at RTSI, and we're looking at, and you say everything here is away from Front Street, and we're looking at capacity, right? So maybe we just say, long term, our goal is to make Front Street more pedestrian-friendly in part of Old Town versus a regional arterial, and that's just a long-term objective that we just want to note and say, think of this, we're going to start on it now. It's not going to happen this next year. We're not going to make that happen in the next year, but we want to at least state it I think most people would, from the Front Street scaping stuff we're doing, they're talking about pedestrian stuff and all sorts of things to create that as more of a, pedestrian-friendly area. And like I say, referring back to the things we talked about at the retreat, I think most folks would be on a page as a long-term goal of working towards that. And then we can say, and these are the things we're working on today, kind of what we are, and clean this up, but we're not leaving out your main interest and not putting in a way that is it's too scary, right? And I don't think most folks would object to that. So I'm just, that's like sub AA.
Yeah, and don't, yeah, and who can argue against that? Let's go back to the goal. So the goal says improve mobility in and around Issaquah. That actually was one of the changes as well that I had suggested, improve mobility. And what that means to me is that if you're going to circulate, you're going to move through, if you're a resident, and you're going to move either, start a trip or end a trip here, or start and end your trip here, right? That the choices that you have are better than they are today. That the predictability of that trip, and therefore just to be in traffic in Issaquah is going to be less impactful, to your quality of life, to your family life than it is today. We want to improve mobility to make it work better, and to not be such a large negative like it is today. And that is, and this, the way it's presented here, it tries to address what we can do with roadways. It tries to address what we can do with transit. It says it in a way in terms of reducing drive-alone trips, part of that with transit, and some other matters as well. So your plug onto that, future reference, is fine. And maybe we should go back to that goal of improving mobility in and around Issaquah. Do we have an agreement around that, above that goal? As simply stated.
I'd say so.
Yeah, when I look at the goal and I look down at objective A, I would actually have objective A and objective B. One would say remove regional pass-through traffic from Front Street, and the second would say identify a regional ring road pass-through traffic route around Issaquah. I would have two different ones. Take it off Front Street, put it somewhere else in town. And then you can actually take some of those things in there and line them up amongst them. But I think you have to call Front Street out. Say, move the pass-through traffic from Front Street. That's the objective. That's how you're going to make town work better. That's how you're going to get people through town better. I agree with you. I think the intent, the great benefit out of that is it then does become pedestrian friendly. I think when you get the cars off with the crosswalks we have and the sidewalk system and trail system we have, you'll get the pedestrian friendly. I think that's part of it. I just don't think there's any action that we have to do to get it to be pedestrian friendly. I think the big deal is get the cars off.
And I was just doing the reverse. If it's more pedestrian friendly, you can't put more cars on. So I was thinking
No, I
other
think
way.
they'll
See,
drive there.
because that's what I'm saying. If we're looking at making, and then everything, if we have that in mind, then everything we do in that area would do something that is geared more towards the foot traffic versus the car traffic. And that's what I was trying to have that in people's heads. So when you look at Front Street, you evaluate things thinking of people on foot as a main factor,
Pedestrian
not a secondary
priority zone.
factor. Okay. So I think we're all good with your goal, Paul. I think that's
Well,
great.
what I'm thinking is when I look at those action plans and especially, well, you take them together, the four there, and at least the construct in my mind, like number one is, and this is, and I don't know if RTSI is the way to get there. I know that we attempted it with our own summit last fall, right? Can we, since we can't solve all these problems on our own, do at least the partners who share this with me, do they have the same perspective? Do we have a common understanding? And without a common understanding of the issues and the needs, then it's going to be pretty difficult. So the first part was really to get that assessment. But this group of actions is about naming the roadways, that, that need improvements to actually ever, if we're ever going, to collectively, if we're ever going to improve mobility in and around Issaquah. So maybe that objective needs to more reflect that, rather than as this specifically talking about, well, what it says right now, maybe the objective needs to say something about, improve the regional roads that inhibit or contribute to the mobility problems in Issaquah.
So, I like that. You're down at the objective level, right?
Yeah, so yeah.
So it's three pieces to me. One is they come off the highway and they come into town. They're going on our roads first. Which ones are you going to put them on? And for me, Front Street gets taken off the table. So they can go on Newport, they can go on Gilman, SR 900. Maybe you can decide they can go on Sunset and Second, but you never bring them back into town. Now, they on a regional road and they have to get home. So we should be working with our Southeast King County counterparts to make sure that that network, SR 900, important to Renton, SR 18 and I-90 and 18, important to Maple Valley, Black Diamond, and Covington. We should be on the same page with those jurisdictions to get that capacity. And then our third piece is what do we do, what are we in control of, which is Front Street, which we are going to turn into a pedestrian priority area. So three pieces. You come off the highway, you hit us first, but you're going to hit the street we want you on. 2, you get on your regional road. We're going to work with our partners to make those regional roads work better. And 3, stay off of Front Street. It's not a regional commuter route. I would have 3 in there.
How do you propose to do that last one? How do you say regional, you must turn, local, you can go straight?
Yeah, I could engineer it. I mean, I could throw a whole bunch of engineering ideas on the table. It's our town, it's our street, it is a local street, it doesn't have the capacity to handle any more than it does now. We'll be able to figure it out. I'm not afraid to put an objective on the table because I don't have the answer tonight of how it's going to work. I'm saying it is an objective, we should state it. We will figure out how to make it work.
So again, so this is a regional agenda, and so you're suggesting this is something that we can do on our own, completely independent of the work that we've identified that needs to be done on 18-900 in the Hobart Road?
I think there are choices that we have in town that we can change the character and feel of Front Street that will actually work its way into regional conversations, because if the IGR says that the new interchange is going to put 30,000 vehicles north on Front Street coming off of 90 and 40,000 south, we're going to say, okay, well then we're going to have to figure out how that ties in with Gilman Boulevard, because it doesn't come down Front Street. So at some level, the region needs to know when they're making plans for I-90 interchange adjustment and improvements to SR 900, that it's taking all of the traffic that currently goes on Front Street too, because we're going to change things so that Front Street is not a commuter route anymore. And they need to know that. So it's not just that it's one of our items, it spills over into all those conversations we have with those people when we're sitting at the table with them. It spills over when King County says, well, maybe we should just do a bunch of roundabouts on Issaquah Hobart Road for $5 million or $10 million and make the traffic flow smoother into Issaquah. No, you can't. I mean, you can, but we're going to do something that makes it not flow up Front Street smoother, because that's not where we want them.
So I guess
He's trying to pull something out.
here, but we're getting a little off base because we're trying to do something in the next year and a half. An objective that when I talk to Senator Mark Mullet or
Right.
a fellow council
on the
member
same
from Maple
page.
Valley
Yes.
or something like that, that I have
Yes.
something in my pocket for the next year and a half. And I think the things you're talking about, they're bigger than that. They're not going to happen in this next year and a half. So I don't want to, say nothing wrong with them, but in the next year and a half, I can't do anything about that, right? So let's say what we can do in the next year. And I'm going to throw it back out. My little theme of, if you put in the back of your head, a goal is to make Front Street a cool street, pedestrian friendly with cool restaurants and all those things that people can walk on. That concept works for me, that whenever somebody does something that that's there. I can't do much with it yet in the next year and a half, but I can start forming that thought that says we want to make that our that's our old town. That's one of our cool things here, right? So we want to preserve that. We're doing things now to to preserve that, and you're just not quite stating it as boldly, I think, as you want to. So, but all the other things here, I think, are legit. There are things we're working on. We're working on 900. We're working on 18. We're doing those things, and we know we're going to be talking to people about those things in the next year and a half, right? So.
We're going to be talking about Issaquah Hobart Road in the next year and a half, too.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. Yeah, we're
Right.
going to be talking about these things.
So do we want money invested in Issaquah Hobart Road since it feeds into Front Street?
I don't know yet, because, we're going to come up with, there's a study that's going to give us some more information, and we can have that discussion. But we don't know what that information is yet, and we don't know where the discussion
Well,
is
I
going to
think we
go.
know whether or not we want to put more cars on Front Street.
Well, I know you do, very clearly, and so, but I don't know if that's is boldly stated by 6 other people. So,
Right.
so that's, it's got to be in with all 7 of us, not one. So that's where I'm trying to get away from, a very specific statement here. Trying to get your concept in there, but not so boldly stated that 6 other people aren't going to say, hold up, wait, that's too strong for me.
And
Bluntly,
specifically,
that's where I'm trying to get.
in the Hobart Road, so the study, we don't know what we're going to get from that. But
Right.
I'll tell you what my hope is. I know what my hope is that we can see a way that, especially in the PM, that it is less of a plug, right? That the traffic trying to flow south, that those, whatever it is, whether it be just total volume or if there's something other, some improvements, I don't know what those are, that can be made somewhere along that road so that there's less backup, that it'll work more effectively, then those will be very interesting to look at. But that is just, what's really key is if the Hobart Road works better, especially in the PM peak, but it's not alone, right? We have to continue to pursue so traffic that that really wants to go, the most direct route is 900, that also improves as a viable route for them. And that traffic that really wants to go on 18, that's also a more viable route. So I never want to really strip those away. So I guess what I would suggest is just the objective can be, let's just, identify and advocate improvements to the regional roads that impact mobility in Issaquah.
Yeah, I don't agree.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to end up agreeing.
So-
like I said, you guys can,
All right.
you're
I
working
think
on Paul's
I-
edits, you can change them, but I'm just going to, I'll
Right.
just speak at council that I think we need something on Front
I'm gonna take your offer at this point, because I think at this point, we're gonna
Just
keep
move
talking
through
some
it.
circles here, and I don't want to keep doing that.
Yeah.
So with your offer, Paul, let's go through here and let's hit your edits and my edits, and please speak up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And do that. If any of our suggestions, like I said on the Front Street, you like, please jump in. So slow the growth of regional pass-through traffic. You said something else. I don't know if that's improve regional roads around Issaquah to reduce pass-through traffic. Thinking out loud. Any of you great minds over here can share if you have any great wisdom either. And that's really what RTSI is doing, right? I mean, RTSI is the thing for me right now. I mean, if we can improve those roads that are really regional roads, that we can get those flowing so people quit driving on all the other minor routes to get around the plugged up roads. I mean, that's the goal there. And that's, again, not going to happen next year and a half either, but it could be what we're working towards. So maybe we could, how about, let's see, improve the function of regional roads to help, I lost it here. Thinking out loud. work towards improving regional roads so that there's less traffic off the major routes. Something of that
Yeah, that's
effect.
directionally what I'm thinking. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
you know, thinking with this, go along here. So I wrote down, but this isn't a final. And
Yeah.
improve the regional roads that contribute to the congestion within Issaquah. Okay, that's close, that's, so say what you said again.
Yeah, I'm gonna improve regional roads to help to reduce traffic on, or minor roads, I don't know. That's not quite wording, but on engineers. Improve,
You got two
improve
engineers over there.
regional road functions to reduce
Congestion within Issaquah.
congestion, there you go, congestion within Issaquah. There you go. That working for everybody here? So let me say it again. Improve regional road functions to reduce congestion within Issaquah. That sound okay? And
I don't know
that's kind of trying to get the focus off there, and I think that could be
Do
said
you need
about
the word
anything.
functions, just improve regional roads to reduce congestion within
Sure,
Issaquah?
do that. All right. Who's taking, you got it?
I
Please.
have improved regional roads to reduce congestion within Issaquah.
There you go. All right. That's our objective. And then there's some suggestions on 3 and 4, under actions 3 and 4 to expand them a little bit. Bob, thank you for that. I think those are good expansions. They're quite long. I don't know if fit here easily in here, but
now you're
there's a
talking
lot
about
of good
Bob's
detail in
email.
there. I'm not sure how to. Is everybody in agreement that 3 and 4 are good things in Bob's
Bob's
notes here,
email?
to add to there, but somehow shrink that to just sketchy?
Do you
So
have
take
that,
the
Emily?
couple
Can you
little
bring
bullet
that up?
points out of there? Can you do that? Okay, so so we're going to
Oh,
approve
you don't
3
have
and
the email up
4 per Bob's thing without trying to do the wordsmithing here. I think 2, add capacity 18 and improve it interchange with 90. I think no one's going to argue with that one. That's our biggest hope. And then 1 to me is, I would tie that into RTSI, which is working with partners to define the problem and so forth, which is what RTSI is doing, right? Which is RTSI. So I just add like comment to RTSI in there. And I think I'd live with those 4 actions. I see some nods here. Okay,
So Bill, I was searching for Bob's email while you were saying that. So
Okay.
on his, boy, I did it. In Bob's email, it says add capacity SR 900. Then he goes on, talks about conversations with state senator
Right.
and something known as a sketch plan, a roundabout at SR 900 May Valley Road. If it determines that a roundabout would be successful, it could lead to a second roundabout further down the road
Right.
toward Renton. The goal of the roundabouts is to improve the efficiency of SR 900 in moving traffic through town and thereby relieving congestion on SR 900 in Issaquah. So your proposal is to
Take that and shrink that into a couple, a much smaller format, since we're trying to put it in
right,
the thing
right.
here.
Okay.
Just
All
hit the highlights of, capacity 900, possible roundabouts, sketch plan, kind of thing, basically focused on a couple of those things that they've been working on with 900, with the sketch plan of where we're going with that in the long. So that we can,
Okay, all right,
again, I
okay.
want to feel like I can advocate for
Yep,
work
yep.
with SR 900.
Right.
And Bob, so you can do that, okay? And then the same thing with item 4, he has conduct a study of Issaquah Hobart Road, reduce that down to, a couple little bullets from there, the highlights, 'cause it has good information in there too.
Okay, any other changes?
And I think partners is all the same, except we might want to actually list RTSI in there, under partners. And then executive status. I think statuses are all good, right? So if everybody's okay with the status, I just leave those as they are. I'm not hearing anybody jump up and down, so did we just finish A? Got one thumbs up, Paul?
Yeah, like, let's talk about under regional partners in that column. It does say, it just kind of rambles on there. Just Bellevue, Snoqualmie, North Bend, state legislature transportation benefit district potential, or state legislature, there's no punctuation.
Right.
And then it just says transportation benefit district potential, in parentheses, potential.
Right.
It doesn't, that's not the name of a partner. That's an action that we could
That's true.
take. It seems to suggest that we may legislatively want to give direction to move in that direction.
Right.
But that's
not a
kind of out of
partner.
place here.
I agree. Let's take that out and put RTSI in there. I don't know if we want to put that anywhere right now. That'd be a possible action, but I'm not sure. We could put 5 under action as a possible, do that? All right, so 5 under action would be a possible transportation benefit district. Good catch. That belongs better there. Okay. Please do, Bob.
Well, one of the reasons it was in there was Maple Valley has approached us. We've had conversations with them about doing a regional benefit district. So there are a couple other partners, but they're already listed. So it may be duplicative, but I think that was the tool they were looking at to deal with some of their issues.
Correct. They're looking at that tool, but RTSI is looking at that. So
Same,
the concept of a transportation benefit district is a concept that we may use or others may use to help with this stuff. So
Yep.
I think that's,
Just wanted to let you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know, I didn't mention it in the email, and I don't know if you were aware. that
I'm definitely
they've
aware,
been,
yeah.
Okay.
Yep. All right, thank you. Stay, don't go. All right, we're done with A. All right. B, reduce internal drive-alone trips. You know, I'm, if you don't have any comments, I'll throw things, I think it's a great goal. I really don't see much in the way of action here in the next few years versus, you know, really, what I need there is more alternatives for folks. So pushing, you know, it says establish agreements with. I'm not sure the action on that one would be. I need alternatives. I need to increase our transit. I need to give us
Yeah,
more
yeah,
alternatives there.
yeah.
I improve 200 and other, you know, in our other alternative service. It's, to me, an action there is create alternatives so that people have an option.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
I'd like some more in there is
Kind
maybe.
of the net, that statement discusses the net, what we're trying to achieve.
Right.
Fewer, and so in combination, again, in combination with making improvement to the roads, if we give people more options to take fewer drive-alone trips, we're developing a comprehensive picture on what to do.
Right,
And so if you want to add that in to the objective,
yes. Or not the objective, to the action. I was saying.
oh, okay, I thought you were,
No, the objective's great. The action, I'd like a 2 under there, which is create more alternatives such as improve Route 200. You know, the alternatives system we're working up for Talus and
so that's a
Squawk-
status
Squawk.
one that's over there. So the the third bullet under status says the Squawk Talus Alternative Services Partnership selected in December 2016. So I
Right.
don't know if there's an update on that. All I know is sometime in 2017, I think this is, what you guys are looking at me is probably the Office of Sustainability has most of the knowledge about this.
Right.
Right, and so I don't know, but so what we know is that something's coming in
Right.
2017.
Well, currently I can tell you, Office of Sustainability is working with Metro right now.
Okay.
And they're starting the talk of what would it look like to access Talus and Squawk, right? And we don't have a picture yet, but the conversation is happening. So I'm not sure if there's going to be wheels on the road in 17.
Okay.
It's 6 months away, but, you know, probably, hopefully soon thereafter. But I just
So
wouldn't bet
are you
Metro's
privy to
gonna-
those? Are you privy to those conversations?
Some of them, yes. and
So
working
it's
with-
talked about it as a 2-year pilot program. Is it 2 years from like now or 2 years from wheels to roll?
Wheels rolling.
Okay, okay.
So, yeah, so it may take a little more than 6 months to get
And
wheels
the
rolling.
objectives, and it's connecting kind of hill to valley. Is
Right.
there specific destinations in the valley other than the transit center?
It's pretty conceptual. They're working on getting it less conceptual. And then somehow that has to
Okay.
tie in with 200's doing, hopefully, to make some ties there too. So, and the transit center and those kinds of places. But as far as I know, they haven't gotten off the conceptual stage. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, but an action there for me is an alternative is work to increase Route 200 as well for longer hours and in a more comprehensive route. And those are actions to me. And it's an alternative that would, I can't use the 200, so. it doesn't work
So
for
we
me.
have some history with the 200, right? It's
Right.
it's not as expansive as it used to be in terms of hours.
Right.
And I don't know that I'm familiar with all of it. I know that it's gone with some reduction and there's been some route changes. So you have a wish, right? Your desire is to somehow make it more useful,
Right.
run more frequently, at more stops, be more effective for more people.
Yes.
Yeah,
Easily
which
stated.
all that, yeah, that sounds great. I'm just thinking, again, because we have history with that one,
Right.
is so what's the conversation we're having with Metro?
The conversation right now is with the alternative service side.
Yeah,
And they're working on a few other things right now. That's not going to happen real quick on the radar, but I'll continue to push it through this year and next, and maybe next year it might get a little more conversation, I'd say. But not this year with the changes they're shooting for right now. They're bigger changes than our 200 route. But I will not stop talking about it.
okay, so you had suggested like an action, a second action. I'm just wondering, maybe, I don't know how meaningful is that first action? What was your second action, create more alternatives?
Create more alternatives by trying to improve Route 200
Oh, use your
and,
specific.
or other, other alternative services. I mean, I don't have it written down or anything, but something to that effect. An action to me is create an alternative of some sort. Otherwise,
Right.
it's just a goal with no action. Right?
So it's a little bit clunky because in the status, so Issaquah Salmon Friendly Trip, so that's a program that we've been part of. And I don't know if that's going to be expiring or something, why there's the time line on there or not, why it just goes through 2016, 2017. I don't know if anybody knows more about that. But it sounds like that is partially funded by and supported by King County Department of Transportation. So maybe that's what the idea is by establishing ongoing funding to keep that alive. And Bob, do you know something about the school pool project? It's not a pool, it's not a swimming pool, it's ride sharing, it's carpooling.
Right.
Paul, if I might, Bill, I'll
Please
just
do,
interject
before I
that the Salmon Friendly Trips partnership agreement is a 2-year agreement, and so we're just in the process of looking at the re-up on that. I think the commitment here is to continue that.
And that is with DOT, so that's different than Metro? King County DOT is different than Metro in terms of an entity that we would work with?
Yes,
Because the Squaw Talus Alternative Services is, I think, a partnership with Metro.
Correct.
correct. And then school pool is currently being piloted at various schools in town. And I think if I remember correctly, they're going to go into evaluation phase early next year and look at expansion too. That's where they are with that program.
Right. Because one of the actions under here, I think one of the traffic pieces that we don't state so clearly is the school traffic. It's very noticeable when it changes on Wednesday late start and so forth, and particularly, so school pool to me is a start to look at that, but it really needs, an action to me is really work really directly as much as we could with Issaquah School District to get their buses, being more efficient and useful and people using them versus all the cars that come in to bring a kid in and drop them off and so on and so forth. So to me, that's an action that, I don't know where to go, but I would love to push something with Issaquah School District to work with them as one of the major causes of traffic internally that's going back and have that conversation get started. It's kind of been there, but I don't think we've really delved into it much. So I'd love to delve into that a whole lot more, because if we could get a handle on that I think would be a significant effect on traffic flows, in particularly a couple areas of town where schools are, obviously.
We would do that this year though, Bill, or
I'd love to start
in
the conversation this year.
2017?
Yeah, I think that's the time that we could at least start the conversation and saying, how could we work with you to help reduce all these trips to schools? Because, there's a lot of people just don't use the buses, or they, other reasons, or they're within the mile that they can't use the buses, and very myriad of reasons. They're running late that day.
Now, does any of the staff here have any recent experience in talking with the school district about this? I think you mentioned something in April. There was some mention.
Sure. We have ongoing
Yeah.
conversations with them about this topic, and school pool is a formal program, a formal attempt to try to get them to look at ride sharing, basically, as a way to maybe reduce the number of kind of drive alone or one parent driving one kid trips. But we have ongoing conversations about other ways. If that rideshare approach is not going to work for as many people as we would like, then we'll continue to explore other options.
Yeah, and I think the district would love to have more people ride the buses, the students at least. So that's been a challenge.
So I think that's worth putting down as an action to, continue those discussions and see what improvements we can make. I think that's a place that, just between us and the school district, I think we can make some dents, talking about all the regional stuff we don't have much control over. I think that's a place we could start, having some effect.
Right, and Emily just said we have ongoing conversations with the school district at some interval, or maybe they're at random, but having it in here then is just adds a little bit more legislative weight to the purpose for those conversations.
And then.
So do you want to add it as an action?
Yes, as an action.
Okay.
I don't know the exact wording yet, but
I
You got
took
something?
down bits
Perfect.
and pieces of what you talked
Thank you.
about, so maybe this is a starting point. Work with ISD to reduce their impact or reduce their effect on our congestion. And then the second part of that I heard was work with ISD to encourage use of school buses for transportation.
sounds good to me. And like I say, I know you're doing that. I'd love to put a little weight on our shoulders, so when I'm talking to someone from school board, I can, kind of keep pushing on that a little bit. I think it's going to take quite a bit of pushing to really make some effect there, but I think we can.
So in that 269, so is that a program that we were in some agreement? Is that reviewed or updated every year, every other year? Do we know the time horizon for that? Because I know we have an ILA or something
Yes.
with them.
And I can't recall if it's like a 3-year agreement, but it does come up for renewal and review. It's been pretty successful. One of the questions with that, though, is do we want to consider other potentials? So earlier this year, the staff was contacted from another large employer who wanted to run their own kind of bus service, direct bus service to their. They didn't follow up with that. But the interesting thing that came up as a result of that was, where do you park all those cars? Since they're not really riding Metro, they're riding a private service, where would you kind of arrange that? Because they've kind of done something informally up in the Highlands. I don't know if it's still continuing, Emily. But
Yes.
yeah. We don't have anything formal with them, but it is something that we may want to consider as additional partnerships with others, so that they don't end up taking private business parking spaces or something that should be related to the Metro Transit Center. But this partnership, I think we've heard from Save Sammamish, Redmond, and Microsoft that they feel it's been pretty successful.
Yeah. Okay. Are we good on B?
Yeah, I think so. Just one last comment on all three of you talked about the alternative services, and I think later this year, when the needs assessment comes out, one of the things that is a big theme in that is access. So it's transport. So one of the things that people in our community have been struggling with is transportation and access to certain activities. So we may want to even kind of, when that report gets presented, even double down further or take a look at additional ways that this alternative services may be able to provide enhanced access to underserved or people in our community.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see if we can move through here a little bit. All right. We're at C, reduce drive-alone trips that originate external to Issaquah. And here we got some stuff about talking to school district even there. I'm okay with this. Any other comments? Paul, do you remember any that you wanted to change from your first shot?
No, to make sure it's clear, at least my intent here is that, the first one specifically says internal trips.
right.
So these are choices that residents have. And this explicitly says external, that originate external. This is creating options for people whose, begin point is outside and they travel in. And the phrase in there, the first action says, continue to advocate for travel shed-based planning. That's a relatively new phrase to me, but the concept is like a watershed. It's the catch basin. What is that sub-region where people come from? Now, we know it's probably pretty wide, but it's denser in certain areas. But remembering that this is a regional agenda, it's got somewhat of a time frame, time horizon that we're working within. We're trying to, create actionable pieces. I think this is a concept that we can develop even further. And I'm not sure, Bill, I'll put it out there. I don't know if it really belongs in here, but this idea that, well, you know what? Actually, it says it down there even further. Number 3, advocate regional investments in area park and ride capacity and transit and ride sharing services. You could be a little bit more explicit about this. If we think about, what's unique about the downtown Bellevue Transit Center, unlike Issaquah, unlike our Sammamish one, unlike Redmond and Kirkland and other ones, that handles more people coming in and out. What's different about it is it doesn't have a parking lot, right? Because people don't get there on a car, they get there on a bus, and they leave on a bus. And we're a little bit different. We're at the satellite. People arrive in a car, and then at the end of the day, they leave in their car. And there may be, I think, longer term, looking further out, a further out orbit of transit centers. So, and we've talked, and that's what this is beginning to suggest. Again, it's not, I don't know that within this time horizon of this regional agenda, perhaps it's something that we'll capture in other ways. But that's what the vision is that if we start thinking about how we can capture more of these trips where they originate outside of Issaquah and give them transit action options into and through Issaquah, that's a way to reducing drive-alone trips. We're reducing the volume of traffic on our streets.
Exactly. And at RTC, I've been with Sammamish neck and neck saying provide Sammamish more transit, and they won't come to Issaquah. They'll ride the bus from Sammamish, and they won't have to come to Issaquah, which they did start doing when they reduced the transit service to Sammamish. So it directly affected us. So that's where we advocate for actually more transit service for Sammamish, because it actually helps us, right? So exactly. I think you're right in line with that, and I totally support that.
One little edit in there, my name is
Okay.
in under the city liaisons. That shouldn't be there.
Oh, get out of there. All right.
I think it's because they have the PSRC up on top.
Yeah, and actually, so this is one of the areas from back in April where it says regional partners, it says King County. Bill, you made the point that really in this case, the partner is King County Metro.
Yes.
So we should clarify that, King County Metro. And then what's not on there is RTC. So the Regional Transit Committee is not on there anywhere, is on the list. So those are two suggestions you made back in April that weren't captured in
Right.
this document yet.
All right.
Yeah, there's PSRC in there, but
Yeah.
that's this, I was taking the list, where it says city liaisons, that is staff. I don't know.
All right. Good catches. Any other ones? All right.
Just a quick question. So we've been talking a lot about the traffic that generates X outside of Issaquah. So so on a land use basis, if we wanted to, like what the school district was considering, they were selling that large property in May Valley to a private developer and went to the county. You know, one could argue that you could use this policy, the administration, in advocating to the district that they should have pursued preserving the property rather than developing the property, or even other large developments that occur south of town. You know, we've not done that. It's a little awkward, but I mean, if that was to that point where we were, wanted to weigh in on larger developments that were outside of town, I think this would provide some direction to that effect. But I don't know that we've been talking about land use as it relates to this component. So just kind of throw it out there. I don't know that we thought about it, but there was certainly that issue with the district that we just kind of said it's the district's concern.
Okay, so noted.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
before we leave there too, we had a lot of conversation, and I couldn't find it either. Back in April, the number 2, the action, if you read, increase funding mobility options implementation. Stop. We were confused in April, and I don't know really what that statement says. And maybe it's one that we should just strike from there.
It's going to stop for a second. Sorry, Paul. I have a meeting I have to be at 9:15, so I'm going to check out and let you two finish the list with that.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Lou. Go ahead, Paul. You want to try rewriting that?
No,
That's yours, so
Well,
drop it or rewrite
I
it.
couldn't recreate it in
Okay.
a way that it is actually contributing to the document.
So you want to just drop
Yeah, we
2?
should do- yeah.
Okay, we're dropping 2. I'm trusting you, Emily, on your notes here. And you added RTC and Metro, right? All right, online. See you Monday, if not sooner. All right. D, this one should be good. I know there's a correction we didn't get here. Pursue the construction of a new I-90 crossing. Take the over out of there. Because Sheldon wasn't here in April, and I stood up for him. I remember that very dramatically, that I said, Sheldon would not want that word in there. It's just a crossing.
It could go under.
It could go under. Sheldon believes it can go under.
Good.
So, in both those places, in objective, it's also in status. You delete the over, just call it a crossing. And we won't discriminate on verticalness.
We're in a tunnel.
The rest of this, I think, is okay, is it not? On D, we didn't have, that's pretty straightforward, one of the straightforward ones we have. Right? You good, Paul?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. E, light rail. And my only thing on this, I think we need to talk about light rail. It's gonna, but it is 25 years out. So I'm not sure how much in this next year and a half directly we're going to be doing with it. We need to keep it in our forefront of our mind because there's going to be things happening, but in the next year and a half, probably not too much. But within the next 5 years, I think we're probably going to have to start, looking at stuff.
So I'm not sure I'm not sure I put this in here, this hire a firm to provide the city with expert advice on zoning. I didn't put this in here. Station design and location. Are we out in front of ourselves? Is there really no action here? This is just a placeholder? Should we take that action out?
And Yeah, I'm
Emily?
wondering about that.
Yeah, what I might just say on that front is, we believe there is some work that we can do in the very near term to start getting ready for future conversations. And I think one of the first actions we've talked about is sitting down with Sound Transit staff in particular and talking about how they work with communities to begin this work on zoning and station design and location. And so that's really the first action that we've teed up, and we're planning to do that very soon, actually, in the next couple of months. So that would be action number one in my mind, is to hold that informational meeting at the staff level. And then, yes, it may not be in the next 6 months or 18 months to hire a firm, but I think we are anticipating doing something along those lines within the next 2 to 5 years, for sure.
Yeah,
So we think we are going to need to be poised and ready in 5 years to be making some significant
Right. And I agree
movement.
that there can be some staff stuff going on from the legislative side. I don't think we're going to be doing too much. So I'd like to hire the firm out, because I don't think we're going to do that in the next year or so. And then we're talking about under status of city must provide zoning for light rail. I don't want to have that in there in the next year or so. I mean, I think I don't have a problem with leaving it there without really an action, but just kind of preparing and be aware and so forth, if that's, but, because it's coming.
Well, we could, how about just adding some type of caveat? It could be beyond, 2009, sometime in 2019 or beyond, just so we don't lose it.
Right, I'm agree with it.
Emily,
let's-
you said, probably in 2 to 5 years, which
Right.
is,
So let's do this. So let's rewrite a one action on there. Let's put something in there that says something of, some staff work, some conversations, definitely not hiring a firm. And I definitely want to take out the status of must provide zoning for light rail, because I don't think that we want to do that in the next year or so either. We can get,
but let's, who can brief me quickly on the whole zoning? I know we would have to do some
there's some
zoning.
debate on that. Well, eventually we have to,
Right.
where it's going to be, but that certainly doesn't have to happen in the next couple of years. The Sound Transit may push for that because they want the whole city
Right.
to be zoned, so then they have
Right.
no problem, but we're not going to
Right.
do that.
Right.
So, at some point we do, but I think that my thought is the further down the line we push that, the more control we have versus.
Well,
giving
certainly
carte
would
blanche.
be, well, I mean, we talked just, this idea of hiring an expert to give advice on zoning is the action we just talked about. So it would follow that. I mean, I'm hearing that we would onboard some expertise to help us develop that strategy, and then from that, council would take the appropriate action on zoning.
But with that, they hire a firm, that means we're going to put it in the budget to hire a firm in
Well-
18, and I don't think we're going to want to.
Well, is that the delay you just talked about?
Right.
So, okay, you're saying in terms of okay, so that second bullet really isn't a status. Just take it out.
Yeah, just take it out. In under status is the middle one on provide zoning. Take that out because that's not relevant and it's not a status. And let's just word a little something in there under one to just say, there will be ongoing staff conversations and preliminary conversations on how we proceed with this. Some way to keep it there. We need to start talking, but not hard on my list there in the next year and a half. Seeing some nods. Emily, are you jotting something down there beautifully for one objective? And so I'm talking too
Pretty.
much to be writing, so.
Not pretty, but, so what I did on just the action piece is I just changed it to say, have city staff undertake preliminary conversations with Sound Transit staff, something along those lines.
Sure.
And then on the status, just removing that second bullet point, thought being that we're probably not going to get that done in the
Perfect.
next 1.5 years.
All right. We good now?
Pardon?
It's okay, you came in late. You grab it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, we're at F, which is widen Northwest Sammamish Road through the pinch point, a TIP project. I don't remember notes on this one in particular. I mean, like I
Yeah.
said, we talked, you kind of gave us an update at it, actually. We got some good news that might actually,
It's
technically
not,
be,
it's not out. It's still alive.
right?
There's going to be
Technically alive.
It's technically alive. There's going to be an open house on June 29th.
Yep,
It's even on our website. Kurt's going to be there.
yeah,
And I think we should also promote that opportunity to our residents who care,
absolutely. So that's a good one.
including
to
those
keep
in the South Lake Sammamish area.
All right,
We can persuade it with numbers.
all
So
right,
that's
our
actually
last one.
great.
That's right, there's a G. Pursue efficiency improvements to the I-90 Front Street interchange.
Sheldon, I want to ask you about this one. So I tried to find, well, there's the I-90 corridor report, and that's you can search for that. And it's a 102-page PDF called, what's it titled? No, it doesn't have the title here on the front page. It does reference all the, what was done and all the potential improvements, but it doesn't really get into much detail about anything. Any reference to the Front Street interchange just says, it has, at one point, it says, reconstruction, anywhere from $44 to $66 million by 2030. And when it actually, in the content, and in the text itself, it really says really very little about, okay, here it is on page 57 of 102. Reconstruct the Front Street interchange, HSP, Tier 3, semicolon, RTP constrained. I don't know what that means. There's the most detail about what might be considered there. Could you translate for me?
Sure. The corridor study had two concepts in there. One was a SPUI, suburban, urban single point interchange. And then a tight diamond was another one that was suggested as two alternatives that those cost numbers were based upon. The interchange justification report, which I briefed you guys on earlier, FHWA requires a much broader study than just looking at that one place along the highway system. To make any changes at any place along the highway system, these IJRs have to look at interchanges on either side and what can happen on the local grid network to avoid changes in access to the interstate system. So while the corridor study identifies a need, the first step in even getting to the point of really clearly defining that need and solutions to it is doing this IJR.
So are we out in front of ourselves with this objective? Well, it just says pursue efficiency to the interchange, but the action is very specific. And that just seems premature. If it's, we haven't even hired the consultant.
The IJR, okay, so this is a WSDOT responsibility when you're dealing with limited access area. We're not ahead of ourselves on this one, in that the IJR is the first step to improving efficiencies at that interchange. It may come in the form of another crossing of I-90 between 900 and Front Street. It could come in a number of different forms, but you've got to start with the IJR.
What I was
to reach your
for
action.
more,
To achieve
so the
your
action
action, I
says
should say.
consider a single point interchange. That's the point. That's the point I'm saying.
Yeah,
We're out in front of ourselves. You just said the
Yeah, you're out in
IJRs.
front of yourself by defining what the
That's what I
improvement
meant.
is.
That's my
Yes,
point.
you are.
Yes.
That's right.
Well, partly that was because we were concerned about that. I think it's somewhere else on one of the other points. Oh, no, it's right there. Participate, advocate in the design of the interchange in order to minimize loss of private businesses in the area of the Front Street interchange. So I think, we don't know what it's going to be. whether it's single point or not. Single point would likely have the least amount of, potentially the least amount of loss of surrounding private property. Because obviously we're concerned about tax base loss, and then just the Gilman Front Street, how they end up kind of, there's not much room between the off-ramp and Gilman on front. So it's already a problem. So yeah, you're right. Maybe the single point interchange is too specific, but we clearly want to make improvements that will enhance the capacity of that, or efficiency of that whole area. Yeah.
Then perhaps, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, what you wrote in your email on this was, the IGR will evaluate the Front Street interchange as well as SR 900 interchange and the potential for another crossing of I-90. I think that's the action. The IGR is going to look at that, and maybe we can just use that one sentence as the action. And that's what's going to happen, right? They're going to look at those things, and then the status is, this summer, hopefully, it'll be, awarded, and they'll start work on it.
Yeah, and the action goes on to really name a potential outcome, right? Advocate in the design of the interchange in order to minimize loss of private businesses in the area of Front Street interchange. So that's an outcome. It's
all way ahead of
I mean, it's
ourselves.
one very specific thing. So that's not really an action.
Right. I would just eliminate what's there and
Put the
in
new
that
language.
sentence.
I'm fine with
one
that.
sentence there.
I'm fine with that.
And you got that in the email. All right. So take that out, and you have a second sentence in here, but I don't think we need that. That one first sentence of yours, I think, covers it all.
In Bob's email.
In Bob's email, and I'll say that again. It's the IGR will evaluate the Front Street interchange as well as SR 900 interchange and the potential for another crossing of I-90. Period. That's the action we're looking at. It's going to evaluate it. That's what it's saying it's doing. Good wording. Are we good on this? Can we send it to council?
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of editing that's going on.
Yeah, and I'm assuming it'll all get edited correct, and we'll get to proof it before it actually goes to council, right?
You want to do it that way? Do you want you as chair to get edits in advance?
Sounds good? Okay. Okay, get it to me, and I'll give the thumbs up, and then we take it to council?
Okay.
Okay, I can do that with you, Emily. Okay. Does this conclude our last item? Okay, so public comment, please.
So Steve Pereira, 170 Northeast Dogwood Street. So a couple thoughts as I heard all of you talk, and these are just kind of as I thought about them. I liked, or at least I was intrigued with the idea of not allowing the pass-through traffic on Front Street as an alternative, more concrete, specific idea, not just as a improved pedestrian bypass. I know that may not be a full council agenda, and that deserves some more consideration, but I think we're losing something if we just call it pedestrian, improve the pedestrian experience. That could just be increasing the width of the sidewalks. It doesn't talk about the traffic specifically. I think that should be called out as an item, call it what it is, make it an actionable thing. I think that's a good idea. A second thought was, it seems like we have a lot of things grouped in a regional agenda as things that might not be regional items, like conversations with the Issaquah School District on traffic driver or student drop-off really aren't, seems to me, a regional item. They're more traffic improvement, and we need to look at maybe having a traffic document that talks about maybe TIP or things like that that are separate, and a living, working document, not necessarily a regional item. So I think we need a more toothful item that talks about how to improve traffic that aren't necessarily a regional item. Otherwise, I think we're increasing our scope from things that we shouldn't be doing in the way that we're doing them, and focus on what traffic should be. Those are my two big thoughts. Please keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve.
Justin Walsh, and I think everyone's going to be very mindful of not jinxing themselves with a 45-minute agenda from here on out. Got a couple ideas on objective A. It seems like it could be worded as just minimizing the impact of regional pass-through traffic, period. I think that captures all aspects of mobility, including pedestrian, creation of regional routes. And within that objective, I'm not seeing anything related to the Highlands and Sammamish and that regional impact as well. I'd be reticent of limiting that to just the wording of road work, because that eliminates the use of other projects that could minimize that, such as load balancing, things that aren't directly related to the roads, but which we need to very much advocate regionally for. Within that objective specifically, I'm also not seeing transit, even though it is addressed in other places. When we're talking about minimizing pass-through traffic, that's definitely a thing there. A potential action item under Objective A, prioritizing the projects that maximize traffic flow around Issaquah, and making that a regional priority. The partnership column generally, that's an interesting column in that some of these partners are potential partners, some could be current partners, and I think limiting it to current partners for things that are actually being worked on in the status column is appropriate. The other thing, I'm unfamiliar with the history of this document, but it seems that it could be a stretch document and not just limited to 1 and 2 years, meaning that some of these projects that we're going to be looking at are very much long-term projects where you have to plant the seed and water the seed for a few years before you get the action that you planned 5 years ahead of time. So limiting that, I think, kind of limits where you're advocating. Objective B, a little limited to say only partnerships in that objective, meaning that you could be advocating with external people such as Microsoft to have them take on actions on their own, absent Issaquah, such as the connector program. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Since some of my comments were already made, I won't restate them, but I do want to say with the connector program, I think there's a big lack of Microsoft buses going up and down Hobart Road, and also even the Highlands. It's not well planned on where those connector buses are, and they're creating major bottlenecks in the Highlands. And just, you know, with the through traffic from Sammamish and all, I really think you need to work more with your local and your industrial partner, industrial businesses around the area to make sure that they are trying to reduce their trips. And with the school district, you also have forgotten the PTA. And it's the parents that make that decision, because right now the buses are efficient. So be very careful when you talk about that. The buses are to capacity. And so we need to plan better, get our parents planning better, signing up for buses so more buses can be bought. And so that maybe have HOV lanes and lights set for buses to get them through and in and out of schools faster, so more people would want to ride the buses. Because that's one of the biggest complaints is, well, we're stuck in traffic with all the parents, so why take the bus? So look at some of those issues on how to make the buses more advantageous and work with the PTAs to change behavior of the parents and the students to get them to ride the bus. The school district has some power, but it's the parents and the citizens that are out, some of them outside our city limits too, that have can make the change. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we good? I think we're done. We're done? We're done. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.